This is what it is, okay? I said empty your mind. Be formless, shapeless, like water. Now you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put it in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now water can flow or it can crash. Be water, my friend.
Welcome to the 29th episode of the Deployment Dojo. This is a live show where we introduce and discuss software installation topics using the WiX Toolset. I'm your host, Rob Mensching, and joining me once again is the first student of the dojo and my very good friend, David Edson. David, how are you doing, man?
Good, thank you.
All right. I feel like last episode we spent more time talking about SDDL than we did WXS. Does that sound right?
Yes.
And I think the cool takeaway that someone had from that was a comment that, I don't remember who said it, but someone said, oh, that's a really cool way to get SDDL content, to generate your SDDL, setting it up inside maybe it was Robson. Bert and Robson, welcome. So we spent a lot of time in SDDL. We're not going to spend hardly any time in SDDL. We're going to be based on the same SDDL that we got set up. What we're going to do now, if you remember the problem, we were granting access to our entire application directory for read access. And what I said is that we want to lock that down even more. Each step we're taking on the episode right now around the system service is about locking down permissions so that if someone was to attack into our service, which is always running, always there, doing all the just hanging out and thus as an attack vector, it can do the minimal amount of damage to the user's machine. So today we're going to take one more step towards that. Does that sound right, David?
Yep.
That jog your memory? All right, yep. Let's get right into it. All right, let's open our project. Let's get our solution set up. It's loading here. And I want to set our build number real quick. Solution Explorer, build. We are on to, no, that's not it. Build command. We are on to episode 29. All right. And what did I name this? Do you remember what I named this? I named this narrowing the permissions of the local service. All right, that's what we're doing. Save it. Yep. Commit it and save it. Episode 29. I don't know, 29 doesn't feel like a special number, but it's getting good. All right, start episode 29. Narrowing the permission. And yeah, that's fine. Commit that. Okay, we are now on build 29. That's what this number does. Those of you that grab these off of the Deployment Dojo GitHub, you can do that. You will see that hopefully each MSI has the correct version number. We should probably check that sometime, David. I don't think we've validated that the numbers have been correct.
Yeah, I don't think we've ever looked.
Yeah, we haven't looked. All right. Not today. Today we have a lot of things to do. All right, so here we are. If you remember left off, we added this create folder as a place to stick our permission. We spent a lot of time talking about that line noise in there, the D colon, all that kind of stuff to set the value on this folder, which is where this component is being installed, which is install folder, which is where we put all of our binaries and make it available to, and set this permission for everything that to all of our binaries that we do not need to give permissions to. All right. Right. So that's the problem. So how about we not do that? Now, the system service has a way to let us do this. All right, Visual Studio. Why is double clicking on service bringing up an empty designer? That's never going to be helpful. All right. If you remember when we first created this service, there is this git initialize the path, and one option was to read the path from the registry.
Right.
Right? And we could give it a path into this registry key. And if not, then it just gets the local path. If that fails, it just uses wherever the application is installed. All right. Clearly, we're not setting this reg key, but we could. So how about we set that reg key to a folder that then we protect that folder, and the only thing that is in that folder is that. Oh, Bert just reminded me, I didn't do the right thing and create a new branch. Oh, no. All right. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Episode 29. Thank you, Bert. You saved us a lot of trouble in the future. I'm going to have a little bit of history to fix up, maybe. I don't know. We'll see. Probably not, actually. It'll all work out because I'm going to bring down main in the future anyway. Okay, so we're going to use this reg key. We're going to put a new path in here and point it to a new data folder. And that data folder then will get the permissions on it without having to grant access to anything else, without getting that permissions to anything else that we don't want to. Does that make sense?
Yes, makes sense.
I think it makes a whole lot of sense to put this thing in a separate location instead of right next to the XE anyway. I feel it feels like a little cleaner. All right, so your choice, David. Do we start by creating the folder or do we start by creating the registry key?
Let's do the registry key real quick.
All right, cool. So when we create a registry key, we could put that registry key in here with this file and this service and things like that. But I think it's a separate unit that we want to maintain as a separate configuration. So I'm going to create a separate component for it. Okay.
Okay.
And then I'm going to create a registry value. All right, root equals, and that key was HKLM. And the key, I'm going to go back and copy it, is software belt test. Okay, so basically this is a standard thing. Software is the root, HKLM machine protected. Only the system service can write to that, the Windows installer being a system service. So it'll be a key that nobody can mess with. And then you create your own key underneath that. We could put deployment Dojo in there, but I just did belt test, kind of our own namespace that we could play in. And then inside there, we create a name of count file path. So that's the name of the registry key. And then we need to give it a value. What should this value be?
The directory that you're going to put it?
That's right. That's right. We need to have a directory to put it. So what directory do we want to put it in? Well, we haven't created that yet. All right. So what should we name the ID for this directory? It doesn't matter. Then we have. Where do we keep our directories? We keep our directories over folders.wxs. We don't have to. I kind of like to centralize directories that are global across the whole space. So I curate a folders.wxs. That's what I like to do. So we need to create a directory in here. And we're going to let's put it under install folder. Seems like a good place as any, right?
Yeah.
So it'll be program files, install folder. This will be our private data folder. That'll all get locked down. And we're going to call it name. We'll give it a name. How about we call it data? Good name, right? Data.
Right.
Good name. And then let's give it an ID. And this is our choice. What do we want to call it? Call it data.
Sure.
It doesn't matter. This is an internal identifier. It matters in that we can refer to it, but it otherwise does not matter. Okay?
Okay.
So this is an internal identifier. Why did I make it mixed case? You remember the special thing about all uppercase things? Been a while?
Yeah, it's been a little while.
We can set it from the command line. The all uppercase ones can be set from the command line. The lowercase ones cannot be set from the command line. Right.
Okay.
So since I don't want people messing around with where we put this data folder, at least I'm saying that right now, maybe we'll change our mind. We don't do that. All right. So then how do we refer to I want to dereference that directory without putting in here C:program files, yada, yada, yada. I can't even type C program files, right? We dereference them with the square brackets.
Right.
So we put data folder inside the square brackets. The Windows installer will look up this value and it'll either find a property named data folder or it'll find a directory named data folder, and it will take the value of whichever one it finds and put that right there for us, which is perfect. All right.
All right.
Cool. Now I'm also going to say if you remember, every component installs to a folder. That's a requirement of the Windows installer, even though it doesn't matter for this registry value where the directory is. I'm going to say this component installs the data folder because that's going to help us out. All right. So we are going to say this component has a registry key and its directory where the component installs to is data folder. Why is that helpful? Because we need to set permissions on data folder. How do we do that? We just copy this. And instead of setting permissions on the component, the directory for that component, we set the permissions for the component, for the directory on this component. See? So it inherits from this component. This component's directory inherits from its parent directory, and we have very minimal amount of code that we have to write.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
I mean, it's it. So we said this component installs to this directory. I would like to get a hold of that so we can add things to it. That's what the create folder does. And I want to set permissions on it. So I'm going to set permissions on the create folder for this component, which will do all this to the data folder. And we will also create this registry key that will end up pointing at this data folder. Cool?
Cool.
All right. And I'm going to make the executive decision. I'm going to put the remove file in here as well. I don't know where. We'll put it right there. I'm going to say this belongs in, or actually because the file's moving, we need to do that. We say we need to remove file. Let me say that again. I'm going to put it back. Undo, 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 undo. This is saying remove this file, Windows Service Text, from install folder. That's not where that file is anymore, because we're going to put it in this directory. So all we have to do is put the remove file in here for Windows Service 1.txt, and it will now remove it out of the data folder.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Right. So what have we done? This looks nice and clean now, doesn't it? This component is now all about installing the Windows service. And this component is all about the data folder, the registry key that points to it, and setting the permissions and removing the file out of it for cleaning it up.
Right.
Pretty cool?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. We added a component, but we added to this component group, and this component group is already referenced by our feature, so we don't have to go change. Remember how we had to go reference, whenever we add a new component group, we'd have to reference it from our package?
Right.
Right here in our feature. Well, because we are continuing to add stuff to our component group, we don't have to do any work. So you see how nice and clean and contained this is? Probably the only thing missing is, maybe some comments if we wanted to, right? If we wanted to, we could say, this component is responsible for configuring the count file path for the service and service, comma, setting the permissions on that, on the data folder, and cleaning up the created text file. There.
And so if there's multiple folders, do you just duplicate that pattern, or do you put each folder under there, under the data folder?
Well, so now it turns into, how do we want to structure it, right? So I need a little more specifics. Are you saying you want to have data 1 and data 2 and data 3 next to each other? Or do you want to have a data folder with subdirectories inside of it that we put things in?
Yeah, I was just thinking more along subdirectories inside of it.
Yeah, so this remove file, so if we list the components and we clean them out, the Windows installer will go ahead and remove these folders for us. If we leave stuff behind, it will not remove them for us.
Okay.
All right. So depending on how complicated your structure is, how many directories you create, we may have to do more work. But I'd want to get more concrete rather than vague and kind of, muddy the thing if we wanted to do that.
Mm-hmm.
How about we verify this works, though?
Yeah, sure. That'd be good.
You're just taking my word for it. You're like, yeah, it definitely works. He says it does. It must work. Martin and Bob, great to have you here. I think it's time for us to spin up the sandbox. So I've been doing a lot of work on the Fire Giant side for a whole bunch of things lately, and I've been spending a lot of time in the sandbox. And I'm very glad that I have the sandbox, because I have messed up a number of times.
You just close it and reopen it.
You just close it and reopen. I was like, ooh, that would have really messed up my machine locally if I had let that bug go through. All right, we have a build. Hey, look, all that code we wrote worked the first time. All right, cool. This is up and running. Bert mentioned something about console app. I'm not sure what he's referring to. We're always a little lagged. So let's see. All right, built test package, bin, x86, debug, enus. Here's our new built test package, not installed. Sandbox is nice and clean. Let's go ahead and dirty it up. Let's put some stuff in it. All right, what are we gonna see? We're gonna see our folder pop up over here. There's the deployment Dojo test. The folder over here. Here we're now installed, and we will refresh over here. We now have our service, and Apple looking in the wrong folder for the log file. Okay, people are bringing up that Rob, you didn't update the app to know where to look for it. Console app 1.exe. Remember we added to the path? That's like the cool feature that console app 1 app has. How about we run it? We're gonna run it, and it could not find part of the path to there. That is not what I expected. Let's see. Notice it did say that it found the right path. That's because the console app has the registry search, or has the registry key lookup in it, just like the service does. Wrote that way long ago. I probably didn't even show it, but if you guys look at the code, you'll see that it's already there. Okay, well, that's not expected, so something's wrong. Oh, there's the data file folder, and it's empty. That's unfortunate. Why isn't it here? What did I do wrong to confuse it? Did we leave the permissions wrong in the end? No. All right. I'm perplexed because I know this worked earlier. So I did something wrong. Is it started? Yeah, it started. So let's look at the properties and the permissions on this thing. Security. Hey, there's local service, and he has ability to write and all that kind of good stuff. Administrators and authenticated users can read from it. What did I do wrong? And of course, it's the service that's failing, which means it's not going to be telling us anything because the debuggability was not the highest thing on our list, and it's not creating it. Oh, no. All right, well, let's go ahead and stop the service, and we're going to start again, just to see if that fixes it. Data directory, start. I think it's at this point that I remind everybody that this is a live show. And anything that can go wrong will go wrong. Or we've had a pretty good run of things just working lately. I almost made this too easy. What did I do wrong? So we know the XC is looking in the correct, the console app is looking in the right directory. The service should be looking in the right directory. So the only thing could be that we got the permissions wrong. Let's see. Let's futz with this a little bit. We'll look at the security on this. And what I sometimes do if I think it's a security problem, that you guys can watch. Not edit. I want to, can I edit? Yes. And I want to add, and I add everyone. Everyone is everyone. Everyone in the world, including people that are not authenticated on the machine. So if we apply that, now everyone that can get to this computer at all can now have full control over this directory. So that should grant anybody access. I'm going to stop the service again and start it and see if that's the permissions problem. Oh, Paul got it. Paul got it. He did. It's right there in my notes. All right. Still didn't work. Set the permissions didn't. Let's blow the sandbox up. What went wrong? This is count file path. This needs to be the name of the file. It needs the name of the file. Currently, what the service is trying to do is write to the directory. Paul is here. All right, Paul, you also are going to get a call out in a little bit here too. All right, does that make sense? This path right here, count file path in our code. See right here, it's going to read this registry key and get it as a path and return the full path. This is the path that ends up being the file that we do an open with. Where do I do that? Path, update file, and we do a file open of the path. What we had in there before, oh, did I close the sandbox? I already closed the sandbox. Shoot, I should have left it open. Does that make sense? What happened?
Yeah.
Bring it up. I want to show it again just so we're very, very clear because that was the mistake. And I did this before in my previous test, but not this one. All right, everything's clean. I'm going to start up this. We have not rebuilt. We have not changed this MSI yet. So when I install it, it will have the same bug in it, but we have reset the permissions. So everything is back exactly the way it would be installing this. Data directory still missing. And if we go and look in regedit, local machine, software, belt test. Oh, nope, sorry. This is a 32-bit, right? The 32-bit x86. So we have to go software, wow, 64. This is where all the 32-bit stuff is. There's our belt test. And we can see, here's our path. This looks okay. Count file path. Oh, but look, it's just the folder. This is probably way too small. I'll bring it into a command prompt. Right? So if I'm like, hey, show me the contents of this file, it's like, that's not a file, that's a directory.
Right.
And it's like, no, that's all busted. So what do? We go to our code where we misconfigured our count file path and we put Windows Service 1.txt on the end of it. There. Now we're going to be saying the path to this file is Windows Service 1.txt. It also means we could change the name of the file here too. How about, should we do that? Or do you want to keep the same? We'll keep the same, Rob. One step at a time. I'll do one step at a time.
Make sure it works first.
Yeah. It's going to work. Oh, famous last words. Thank you, Paul. That was exactly it. I totally forgot about that step. All right. Sandbox, please. Come on over. Zoom. All right. Here we go. Pop everything open. Bin. x86. Move this out of the way. Debug. ENUS. Built test. Installing. Folder will get created. That looks good. We're going straight to the command prompt. Console app1.exe. Haha! We have a count. And why is that working? Because if we look inside our deployment dojo, in our data, we now have Windows Service 1.txt. Yay! And everybody cheers, right? Dave's like, yeah, okay, whatever. You finally got it right. Okay, so XE's running. Let's go ahead and uninstall real quick. Make sure that we clean up our folders, all right? So here we are looking at this file. We expect this file to disappear. Uninstall. Are you sure you want to uninstall? Yes, I am. Uninstall, boom. And Windows Explorers tell me that this folder is gone. And if I come back here, we can see it is gone. And we've cleaned up after ourselves. Console app 1 is no longer an exe. Our services have been cleaned up. So we're all back to good. Install, uninstall seems to be working.
Right.
All right. Woohoo! That was almost perfect. I mean, it was perfect. It's nice. I don't like always tripping up, but it's also good to, make mistakes every once in a while so everybody can see, yeah, no, this is real. And I've tested a whole bunch of things that they should work, but I don't always get them all perfectly right. How about we change this name real quick? There, right? So if we name the file here, data.txt, that's the registry key that's going to configure the Windows service to say, hey, write to this data.txt. And then when we uninstall, we want to make sure that we say, hey, let's remove that data.txt. And for those of you guys, just so we can remember, here is the code. Let's see. Here's the code inside the console app 1 that reads that same registry key. And if it can't find that path, then it looks for it right next to the console app. Okay.
Gotcha.
So now we're going to put it in our data folder and we're going to call it data.txt. Cool. One last little configuration change just to prove that it works. Although I was thinking this is the way we were going to prove it. Instead, I proved it by not saying the file name and it didn't work at all. All right, here we go. Sandbox back up. Wait for it to open all our windows. I like having these spread out a little bit because I love seeing the folder appear over here. I really wish this thing would update automatically to show the service and that this would show up the package, but they don't. I have to refresh them manually. There's our deployment dojo build test. Our services here and running. Well, right here at the top. Our folder is here running. Let's go ahead and open a command prompt. Make it big. Console app 1.exe will run. It is showing us that there is, counting. And in here and in our data folder, we will see data.txt.
Yep. Cool.
Pretty simple. So what have we done? The important thing we've done is we took all of our configuration, we isolated into this component, pushed the component into a data folder so that we only grant permissions, all these extra permissions to this data folder, not our entire install folder and everything else, just this data folder. And then we moved our code around to set the configuration, got the configuration wrong, fixed it, good. We now remove the file, as we have always, and our permissions are set and everything is working just like it did before.
Right.
Okay, now, this is always the part that I like doing at the end. And it's like, all right, let's look at the changes that we've made here, right? So one, we've added this directory to the central location. All right. So this now is a data folder that everybody across our install is using. We could choose to isolate that directory into our code. And maybe if we have a little bit of time, we'll do that. We also then added, and you can see this diff, which is basically, we added a new component, but you see how the permission is the same. It's basically, hey, you added a component end component line here, added a couple component and a registry value, and then the rest of this was the same down here. So it's a very small change, isolated to just our components. So other people working on other things in setup, in the console app or in the Windows Form app, we don't have any collisions with them at all. All right?
Right.
Cool. All right. Let's do move service data file to data folder. Okay. Commit all those, please. All right. I want to take one more look, just a little bit of code organization real quick before we wrap it up here.
Okay.
All right. So I chose, because I put it here, to put the directory inside here at the install folder. We could also, instead, we could put the directory inside here if we wanted to. We refer to the other folder, and then we say, hey, we're going to define our data folder inside our fragment as part of the Windows service. Okay, this would be work as well, because then we refer to this thing, it all get hooked up the same, and we would just hook this data folder into install folder in a separate place. That's what this says to me, is that data folder is really an implementation detail of the Windows service code. So let's not spread it out into the central folder location. Whereas opposed, if we have data folder installed here, we're saying data folder is an important part of the overall application and therefore should be global and everybody should see it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does.
It's totally a code organization question. And it's because we don't know where we're going with data folder, I just picked one. But either one is correct depending on which your scenarios. Is data folder private to Windows Service? Then I would put it in here. If it's not private to Windows Service, I'd put it out there.
Right.
Cool. I still like the one that we have checked in. Let's see if I do that. And we have no git changes. Cool. Sparring David. All right. As I go ahead and do this push and all that kind of stuff, do you have questions, things, other ideas, other stuff people in the chat want to talk about? I'm gonna do this push real quick. Enter a message.
I think I asked pretty much the one I wanted to early on. It's pretty straightforward.
Yep.
Here. Yeah, so just for other folders, it's kind of this pattern, the component directory, create folder with those permissions on it.
Yep.
If it wouldn't have found that registry key and it would have used the default what was it, Windows Service 1.txt or whatever, and you wouldn't have put that in there to remove, would that have been stuck there on uninstall?
Yeah, so let's do that. We'll call this.
I was just curious.
Yep, we could do that really fast. I know this is sample state, but the Windows guy is screaming that this problem would just go away by writing logs to see Windows temp and no permission. Well, so Windows temp, I'm not sure LocalService has LocalService has access to Windows temp. It might. I'm not sure that Console App 1 has access to temp. The permissions on Windows temp are a little bit different. So this is really making the whole purpose of this is to show a file that is private to our application and holding on to it. All right, so what do? I configured the service to write data.txt, David, and I'm going to remove the old name, which means it's not removing the correct file.
Right.
Let's see, everything's still running, so let's go ahead and uninstall. Yep, the folders have all been removed. You hop out of the way. Okay, and I've rebuilt. Sorry, I need to jump back. The build succeeded. All right, good.
Yep.
Build, run install, deploy Dojo build test. The file is data1. All right. Do we need to see it work? console app. We're just going to uninstall it. Oh, actually,
Yeah.
I take that back. I have the console app here. All right, cool. We're running again. It works. Now the question is, when we uninstall, what happens? What do we expect to happen?
Right. We want the file to go away.
But we told it to remove Windows Service 1.txt.
Right.
So the file's not going to go away if this works correctly. Uninstall. All that is good. And here we are left with data.txt in our folder and our deployment dojo. Oh, look, this folder's empty because it took all the files out of here. But because you had this data file left over, the Windows installer is like, hey, that's yours. I'm going to leave it. Do what you need to do with that. Cool?
Cool.
All right. So now that we've done all that. Yeah, so Robson now is jumping ahead. So I've kind of tripped into this whole world of, yeah, this is application data. Application data, like we talked about, David, is owned by the application. It's very easy. Then we have user data that the installation should hopefully do nothing with, because that's owned by the user. We are not going to delete your term paper. We're not going to uninstall your term paper. That makes no sense at all, right? But then we have configuration, and we are now set up perfectly to talk about configuration. So Robson is seeing into the future. And we'll get to, we will be talking about that. In fact, I think we're going to talk about that exactly next week. And I think that's all I had to do. What is this? I'm trying to remember the syntax. I'm sitting here trying to remember what the syntax is for doing that. Okay, that is the syntax. Episode commit all. No, I don't want to commit. I already pushed. Sorry. Pull request. All right, cool. I wanted to do one last little thing since we're here. We have this console app. What? All right. So this is great. Paul just subscribed and was going through, and Paul pointed out a nice thing. I've been using command CMD inside the sandbox a lot, but there is PowerShell. I use PowerShell outside the sandbox, but I've been using command inside the sandbox. I don't really know why that is, because I have to switch back and forth my brain back and forth between the two syntaxes, but whatever. Are we still installed? Yeah, we are. Well, we're not installed, but the file's still there. CD / program files. It's a little slower here. Oh, gosh. Program files? My tab completion is... Wow. All right, that's better. Okay. CD deployment dojo. This is a reference. See, now I can type ls again. This is a reference to last week. He gave the command that I don't use. I don't use PowerShell enough to know all the things that I should know, honestly. But he said that you can use this command .get ACL and tell it the path, and this will give you a whole bunch of information on it. And you can ask for the SDDL of it, and there it will go and give you the SDDL for it as well. Same as CACL data.
No.
That
cackles.
S. Pick S. I left the S off. I think. No,
Yeah.
I don't remember the switch.
It's S. Yeah.
It's /S. It's particular. No, maybe not. One of these. Anyway, whichever command I got right last time. No, it was at the end. Oh, maybe it was I did -S, didn't I? And it doesn't like this syntax. Okay, fine. Put in PowerShell. There we go. Ta-da! Anyway, so you can use either of those. And Stefan has brought up the whole iACLs thing, or iCackles, which is actually the thing to replace cackles, but I've used cackles for so long that I don't know. iCackles is, I think, a little different. Yeah. And I don't know what it is off the top of my head. So all these are the same thing, done different ways. If you use PowerShell, that get ACL -path and then get the STDL on it is kind of cool. Cool?
Cool.
All right. We are set up, and we haven't even seen into the future. All of our checks have passed. Show our checks. Hey, our build succeeded in episode 29. We don't usually see this because usually we've already signed off by now, but I'm going to merge this, and all of you out there can see the code that we've done for episode 29. We'll be back next week, and we'll be doing episode 30. Sound good, David?
Sounds good.
Thank you for spending time with us. Thank you, all of you, for spending time with us. This is always fun. I'm going to go get back coding because I have a lot of stuff to get done. Till then, see you guys later. Bye.
Bye.